The idea of an inner monologue has long been treated as a universal feature of human consciousness, a kind of constant narrator that accompanies thought and decision-making. For many people, thinking feels inseparable from words, sentences, and imagined voices that comment on experience as it unfolds. This assumption, however, has been challenged by growing psychological research and personal reports showing that not everyone experiences their inner world in the same way. Some minds are notably quiet, operating without a continuous stream of verbal thought, which raises important questions about what thinking truly is. To understand silent minds, it is first necessary to separate thinking from language. While language is a powerful cognitive tool, it is not the only medium through which the brain processes information. Humans evolved long before complex spoken language, relying on perception, emotion, imagery, and action-based reasoning to survive. In this sense, inner speech is better understood as one possible strategy for organizing thought rather than a requirement for consciousness. Psychological studies suggest that inner experience exists along a wide spectrum rather than in a single standard form. Some individuals report constant verbal narration, others experience occasional inner speech, and some describe thinking almost entirely in images, sensations, or abstract awareness. Silent minds are not empty, they are simply structured differently. Their thoughts may emerge as sudden understandings, visual patterns, or emotional intuitions rather than spoken words. The concept of a silent mind often surprises those who rely heavily on inner monologue, because language feels so central to their reasoning. This surprise reveals how deeply personal inner experience is and how easily people assume their own mental processes are universal. Psychology reminds us that subjective experience cannot be fully inferred from outward behavior, as two people can reach the same conclusion using very different internal paths. Cognitive neuroscience supports this diversity by showing that multiple brain networks contribute to thought. While language-related areas are active during inner speech, other regions handle spatial reasoning, emotional evaluation, and sensory simulation. In individuals with minimal inner monologue, these nonverbal systems may play a more dominant role, allowing efficient reasoning without verbal mediation. Silent thinking may also offer certain advantages. Without constant verbal commentary, attention can remain more closely tied to present-moment perception. This can lead to faster reactions, stronger visual memory, or a more intuitive style of problem-solving. Rather than debating internally, silent thinkers may simply recognize solutions as coherent patterns. At the same time, the absence of inner monologue can pose challenges in environments that privilege verbal reasoning. Educational systems often emphasize talking through problems or explaining thoughts step by step, which may feel unnatural for nonverbal thinkers. This mismatch can create the false impression that silent minds are less reflective or less analytical, when in fact they may be deeply thoughtful in a different mode. Understanding the nature of inner experience also has philosophical implications. If thought does not require words, then consciousness itself cannot be reduced to language. This challenges long-standing assumptions in Western philosophy that equate rationality with verbal reasoning, opening the door to broader definitions of intelligence and awareness. The silence of some minds ultimately invites humility. It reminds us that our own mental habits are not the blueprint for all human thought. By acknowledging this diversity, psychology moves closer to an inclusive understanding of the mind that honors both spoken and unspoken forms of cognition. In recognizing the varied ways people think, we gain a richer appreciation for human consciousness as a whole. Silent minds are not missing something, they are expressing an alternative and equally valid way of engaging with the world. The presence or absence of inner monologue is shaped by a complex interaction of developmental and biological factors. From early childhood, brains adapt to the environments in which they grow, reinforcing certain cognitive strategies over others. Language exposure, social interaction, and educational practices all influence whether verbal thought becomes a dominant internal tool or remains secondary. Children often begin thinking in sensory and emotional terms before mastering language. As speech develops, many children gradually internalize language, transforming external dialogue into inner monologue. However, this process does not unfold identically for everyone. Some individuals internalize language only partially, continuing to rely on nonverbal cognition as their primary mode of thought. Neurological differences may also play a role. Variations in brain connectivity, especially between language centers and executive control networks, can influence how naturally inner speech arises. In some brains, verbal pathways are highly efficient and frequently activated, while in others, visual or intuitive networks dominate mental processing. Genetics may contribute indirectly by shaping temperament and cognitive style. Individuals who are naturally more action-oriented or perceptually focused may find less utility in constant verbal reflection. Over time, the brain strengthens the pathways it uses most, reinforcing silence as a stable cognitive pattern rather than a deficit. Research on neurodiversity further complicates the picture. People on the autism spectrum, for example, report a wide range of inner experiences, from vivid inner monologue to almost entirely nonverbal thinking. This variability suggests that silent minds are not tied to a single condition but are part of normal human diversity. Brain imaging studies reveal that thinking without words is still highly structured. Silent thinkers often show strong activation in areas related to imagery, spatial reasoning, and emotional processing. These findings counter the misconception that verbal thought is more advanced or more complex than nonverbal cognition. Hormonal and emotional factors may also influence inner speech. Stress and anxiety tend to amplify verbal rumination, while calm or flow states often reduce inner dialogue. Some individuals naturally reside closer to these nonverbal states, experiencing clarity without commentary even in everyday situations. Cultural biology plays a subtle role as well. Cultures that emphasize observation, imitation, and embodied learning may encourage less verbal self-talk than those that prioritize debate and explanation. Over generations, these cultural habits interact with biology to shape typical cognitive styles. It is important to note that inner monologue can change across the lifespan. People who were once highly verbal may experience quieter minds after meditation practice, trauma, or neurological change. Likewise, silent thinkers can develop stronger inner speech if life circumstances demand it. Understanding the biological and developmental roots of silent minds helps dispel the myth that they result from laziness or lack of self-awareness. Instead, they reflect adaptive outcomes of diverse brains developing under diverse conditions. One of the most intriguing questions about silent minds concerns emotional processing. Inner monologue is often associated with self-reflection and emotional regulation, leading some to assume that without it, emotional awareness must be limited. Psychological evidence suggests otherwise, showing that emotions can be processed deeply without verbal narration. Silent thinkers often experience emotions as bodily sensations, images, or immediate understandings rather than labeled feelings. Instead of saying internally that they are anxious or joyful, they may simply feel tension or lightness and respond accordingly. This direct connection can sometimes make emotional experiences feel more intense or more authentic. Verbal thinkers, by contrast, may analyze emotions extensively, sometimes to the point of rumination. While this can support insight, it can also prolong distress. Silent minds may avoid this loop by not translating emotion into language unless necessary, allowing feelings to rise and fall more naturally. Decision-making also differs between verbal and nonverbal thinkers. Inner monologue supports weighing options through imagined dialogue, while silent cognition often relies on gut feelings or pattern recognition. Psychological studies on intuition suggest that this nonverbal approach can be remarkably accurate, especially in familiar domains. Self-concept in silent minds may be less narrative-driven. Without constant internal storytelling, identity may feel more fluid and present-focused. Rather than defining themselves through elaborate self-descriptions, silent thinkers may know who they are through consistent action and felt values. This does not mean that silent minds lack introspection. Reflection can occur through images, memories, or shifts in emotional tone. Insight may arrive suddenly rather than gradually, appearing as a clear realization without an obvious verbal trail leading up to it. Mental health professionals are increasingly recognizing the importance of accommodating different inner experiences. Traditional talk-based therapies assume strong inner monologue, which may not suit everyone. For silent thinkers, approaches that incorporate imagery, movement, or somatic awareness can be more effective. Mindfulness research offers additional insight. Many meditation practices aim to quiet inner speech, suggesting that silence is not only natural but also beneficial in certain contexts. Silent thinkers may begin closer to these states, experiencing clarity that others must train to achieve. However, challenges can arise when silent minds are expected to verbalize emotions on demand. Difficulty translating nonverbal experience into words can be mistaken for emotional distance. In reality, the emotion is present but encoded in a different psychological language. Recognizing these differences allows for more compassionate and flexible understandings of emotional life. Silence within the mind is not an absence of feeling or reflection, but an alternative way of relating to inner experience. Silent minds exist within social systems that heavily privilege verbal expression. From classrooms to workplaces, the ability to articulate thoughts aloud or explain reasoning step by step is often equated with intelligence and competence. This bias can disadvantage individuals whose thinking does not naturally take a verbal form. In social interaction, inner monologue often prepares responses and simulates conversations in advance. Silent thinkers may engage more spontaneously, responding directly to what is happening rather than rehearsing internally. This can make them appear either refreshingly present or unexpectedly reserved, depending on context. Cultural narratives reinforce the idea that talking to oneself internally is normal and necessary. Movies, literature, and media frequently portray inner monologue as the essence of thought. These portrayals shape expectations and can make silent individuals feel unusual or misunderstood. Education systems could benefit from acknowledging cognitive diversity more explicitly. Visual learning, experiential tasks, and nonverbal demonstrations of understanding provide alternative pathways for silent thinkers to show competence. Such approaches benefit verbal thinkers as well, enriching learning for everyone. In creative fields, silent minds may excel by working directly with images, sounds, or physical materials. Their creativity may emerge through doing rather than explaining, resulting in works that feel intuitive and cohesive even if the creator struggles to describe their process. Technology also plays a role in shaping inner experience. Constant textual input from messages and social media can increase inner speech in some individuals, while others remain largely unaffected. This interaction raises questions about how modern environments may amplify or suppress different thinking styles. Leadership and teamwork benefit from recognizing silent cognition. Not all insights arrive through discussion, and some of the most valuable contributions may come from individuals who think quietly before acting decisively. Creating space for multiple modes of participation enhances collective intelligence. Cross-cultural psychology highlights that societies vary widely in their tolerance for silence. In some cultures, quiet reflection is respected, while in others it is seen as disengagement. These norms influence how silent minds are perceived and how comfortable they feel expressing themselves. As awareness grows, the language used to describe thinking may evolve. Rather than asking people to speak their thoughts, we may learn to ask how they understand or perceive a situation. This subtle shift validates nonverbal cognition as equally legitimate. Ultimately, exploring why some minds are silent expands our understanding of what it means to think. It challenges narrow definitions of intelligence and invites a more inclusive view of human psychology, one that listens not only to inner voices but also to inner quiet.